She was just taking a quiet afternoon stroll in a Savannah park, but when a terrified scream echoed, she saw 5 gangsters attacking 2 women. What they didn't know? The woman they dismissed was Master Sergeant Anya Nix Volkov, a battle-hardened Delta Force operator. And a clue at the scene was about to unlock the most mysterious case in the city's history. Quick pause. Tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you like these stories, be sure to subscribe. The late spring air in Savannah was a thick, wet blanket, smelling of jasmine and impending rain. It clung to the skin, a constant reminder of the city's languid southern pace. Inside a small, tidy bungalow, nestled among the iconic live oaks, the silence was even more oppressive. Master Sergeant Anya Nix Volkov held a spoonful of lukewarm soup to her father's lips. Liam Volkov, once the city's most formidable detective, a man whose presence filled every room, now seemed to shrink in his favorite leather armchair. He was in his late 60s, but the degenerative neurological disease had aged him a decade, carving deep lines into his face and stealing the sharp glint from his pale blue eyes. His mind, once a steel trap of clues and connections, now a labyrinth of fog. "You need to eat, Dad," Anya said, her voice a low murmur, the same tone she used to calm a nervous recruit, though this battle felt infinitely more hopeless. He didn't respond, his gaze fixed on a point beyond the window, lost in a past she couldn't reach. The feeling of helplessness was a corrosive acid in her gut. She was a Delta Force operator, a woman trained to confront and neutralize any threat, yet here she was, utterly defeated by a silent enemy attacking from within. Placing the bowl aside, she decided she needed air. The suffocating quiet of the house was becoming a cage. Forsyth Park was a postcard of southern charm, its grand fountain serving as the heart of a sprawling green expanse. The setting sun cast long, dramatic shadows through the Spanish moss that dripped from ancient oak branches like the beards of old men. Anya, a woman in her mid-30s built of coiled springs and quiet intensity, walked with a purpose that seemed at odds with the leisurely couples and laughing children around her. Her athletic frame, clad in simple dark jeans and a gray t-shirt, didn't draw attention, which was exactly how she liked it. But her gray eyes, the color of a stormy sea, missed nothing. The nervous twitch of a man talking too loudly on his phone, the way a group of teenagers shifted their weight as she passed, the quickest routes to cover. It was a curse of her training, seeing the world as a constant matrix of potential threats. The peace felt fragile, deceptive, and then it broke. A scream, sharp and terrified, sliced through the humid air. It wasn't the playful shriek of a teenager, it was raw, primal fear. Her head snapped toward the sound. Near the fountain, a scene of brutal efficiency was unfolding. 5 men in black hoodies, absurdly hot for the weather, had cornered 2 women. They moved with a predatory coordination that set off every alarm in Anya's head. The first woman, Eleanor Vance, was a pleasant-looking woman in her late 50s, her face a mask of panic as she tried to shield her companion. Her sister, Dr. Isabel Reed, slightly younger with an academic's intelligent but frightened eyes, was the clear target. "Give her to us, and your sister lives," the leader growled. He was tall and lean, with a menacing tattoo of a coiled serpent devouring its own tail inked on the side of his neck. This was Silas, and his eyes held a cold, professional emptiness. "Please, just take our purses. We don't have anything," Eleanor cried, her voice trembling. Anya didn't hesitate. She moved, a blur of dark denim and controlled fury. The first man, distracted by the women, never saw her coming. A sharp elbow strike to his temple sent him crumpling to the grass without a sound. The second turned, pulling a knife, but his wrist was met with a block that sent a sickening crack through the air. Anya disarmed him, reversed the blade, and pressed the cold steel against his throat. "Let them go!" she commanded, her voice dangerously low. The remaining 2 thugs charged, but they were met with a whirlwind of precise, debilitating strikes. A kick to a kneecap, a palm heel strike to a nose, a swift leg sweep. It was over in seconds. Silas stared, disbelief warring with rage on his face. He shoved Dr. Reed aside and lunged, a desperate, clumsy attack. Anya sidestepped his bull rush, using his own momentum to pivot and apply a chokehold, bringing him to his knees as the air was squeezed from his lungs. The wail of approaching sirens grew louder. In the chaos, she noticed one of the downed men scrambling away, disappearing into the deepening twilight. Before the first police car skidded to a halt, Anya's hand darted into Silas's pocket, her fingers closing around a heavy, silver Zippo lighter, exquisitely engraved with the same Ouroboros serpent from his tattoo. It felt out of place, a symbol of wealth and power on a common street thug. The first officer on the scene was Detective Marcus Thorne. He was a man in his mid-40s who looked as though he ran on stale coffee and cynicism, his suit jacket rumpled and his expression permanently weary. He surveyed the scene, 4 large men groaning on the ground, 2 shaken women, and Anya standing over the unconscious leader with an unnerving calm. He was a career cop who had seen his share of strange things in Savannah, but this was a new level of bizarre. "Ma'am, you're telling me you did all this?" he asked, his gaze sweeping over Anya's unassuming frame with profound skepticism. "You need to come down to the station, Ms. Volkov. We need a full statement. This is a complicated mess." Anya simply nodded, her hand clenching the cool metal of the lighter in her pocket. Complicated, yes. But it wasn't a mess. It was a message, and she was beginning to understand that it was meant for someone far more powerful than a simple street gang. The interrogation room at the Savannah Police Department smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant, a combination that Anya found deeply irritating. The process was agonizingly slow, a tedious dance of procedure and paperwork. Detective Marcus Thorne, though clearly competent, operated within a system built on probable cause and warrants, a world away from Anya's reality of immediate action and calculated risk. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his thinning brown hair. "The asphalt vipers have been a thorn in our side for years, Ms. Volkov," he explained, his tone patient but firm. "They're territorial, violent, and mostly involved in low-level smuggling down at the port. My guess is they saw 2 well-dressed women, thought it was an easy score, and got more than they bargained for." Anya felt a surge of frustration. "Detective, with all due respect, that wasn't a mugging. Their movements were coordinated, they ignored valuable items, and they were specifically trying to abduct Dr. Reed. They knew who she was." Thorne sighed, the weariness of his job etched onto his face. "I hear you, but without more evidence, they're just another gang of thugs. We'll put out a bolo on the one who got away, but I can't launch a full-scale investigation into a phantom conspiracy based on a hunch." It was clear she would get no further. She couldn't wait for the wheels of justice to grind slowly forward while a threat was still active. That night, she turned her father's old study, long dormant and filled with the ghosts of cold cases, into her command center. His old desk, scarred with coffee rings and faint indentations from years of frustrated fist-pounding, felt like a familiar battlefield. Her military-grade laptop came to life, its quiet hum a stark contrast to the chirping crickets outside. Anya slipped into the digital shadows, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she navigated the dark corners of the internet where information was a currency. Her search led her to a name, Flickr. An hour later, she was in a dimly lit, sticky-floored bar near the riverfront called the Rusty Anchor. It was a place where secrets were whispered over cheap whiskey. Flickr was a rail-thin man in his 30s, his nervous energy so palpable it seemed to vibrate the air around him. His eyes, wide and bloodshot, darted constantly towards the door. He survived by knowing things and knowing who to sell them to. Anya slid a folded $50 bill across the table. "Asphalt vipers," she said, her voice barely audible over the jukebox. Flickr flinched, snatching the bill. "You don't want to mess with them," he whispered, his voice raspy. "They're not just some crew, they're gatekeepers. They watch the docks for someone big. They control who comes in, who goes out, and what gets moved. They're the muscle for a ghost." That was all he knew, or all he was willing to say before scurrying back into the shadows. It was enough. The vipers weren't the head of the snake. They were just the fangs. The next morning, Anya found her father sitting by the window, a rare clarity in his eyes. He was looking through an old photo album. "You have my mother's eyes," he said, his voice surprisingly steady. It was a good day. Seizing the moment, Anya sat beside him and placed the silver Zippo lighter in his trembling hand. Dad, I think yesterday's attack is connected to something from your past. The harbor ghost. Liam's fingers traced the Ouroboros symbol, and a spark ignited in the depths of his memory. His breath hitched. Ouroboros, the serpent, the symbol of eternity, of a cycle that never ends. He struggled to his feet, his body infused with a sudden urgent purpose. He moved to an old, locked filing cabinet in the corner of the study, a piece of furniture Anya hadn't seen him open in years. With fumbling fingers, he unlocked it and pulled out a dusty accordion file box tied with faded red string. "My file," he rasped, pushing it into her hands. "Everything I had. They took my badge, but they couldn't take this." Inside was the anatomy of a 15-year-old obsession. Faded photographs of a smiling young man named Kean Croft, son of shipping magnate Julian Croft, whose disappearance had been the case that broke her father's career. There were crime scene photos of the dock where he was last seen, a single crudely drawn Ouroboros spray-painted on a container wall. As Anya sifted through Liam's handwritten notes, she felt his desperation bleeding through the ink. He had suspected Julian Croft from the beginning, noting the man's strange lack of grief and his obstruction of the investigation. But Croft was a pillar of the community, untouchable. Then she found the detail the official investigation had dismissed. A report from a university professor stating that Kean Croft, a business major, had been secretly auditing advanced chemistry courses. Tucked within the file was a transcript of an interview with Kean's former girlfriend, who tearfully recounted his heated arguments with his father over the ethics of the family business. The lighter in her hand suddenly felt heavy, a cold, metallic link between a father's buried secrets and a new, unfolding threat. The past wasn't dead. It had been waiting. Before driving towards the industrial wasteland of the port, Anya pulled her car over on a quiet street overlooking the Savannah River. The moon cast a silver trail on the dark, churning water, and the massive skeletal frame of the Talmadge Memorial Bridge loomed in the distance. She rested her forehead against the cool glass of the window, the engine ticking quietly as it cooled. Out on the battlefield, the enemy was clear, the objectives defined. There was a raw, brutal simplicity to it. But this fight, the one she was waging for her father, was different. It was a battle against shadows, against a disease that had no face, against a past that refused to stay buried. The weight of being the strong one, the protector, settled heavily on her shoulders. She was a warrior trained to endure any hardship, but the sight of her father's fading light was a pain that no training could prepare her for. This gnawing ache, however, did not weaken her. It forged her resolve into something harder than steel. This mission wasn't for a flag or a country. It was for the man who had taught her what justice meant, and she would tear down the entire city to restore the peace that had been stolen from him. Taking a deep, steadying breath, she put the car in drive. The hunt was on. The warehouse district was a forgotten part of the city, a place of rust and decay where buildings slumped like tired giants. Anya parked several blocks away and moved through the shadows, a ghost in the humid night. The Viper's lair was a large, corrugated steel structure, bleeding rust from every seam. 2 sentries, bored and sloppy, were posted near the main entrance. Anya circled to the rear, using a discarded length of steel cable as a makeshift grappling hook. The hook bit into the roof's edge with a soft thump. She ascended the wall with the silent, fluid grace of a predator, slipping through an unlocked ventilation hatch. Below her, the warehouse floor was a hive of illicit activity. It was far more than a simple smuggling den. Men were carefully packing not just rifles and ammunition, but sophisticated laboratory equipment. Centrifuges, biocontainment hoods, and large unmarked steel drums that hummed with a low, dangerous energy, into crates stamped with the ubiquitous Croft shipping logo. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't just about moving weapons. It was about creating them. She found Silas's office in a raised section overlooking the main floor. It was sparsely furnished, a map of shipping routes pinned to one wall. On the desk lay a dossier on Dr. Isabel Reed, complete with her research notes on a catalytic agent capable of stabilizing volatile chemical compounds. Next to it was a manifest for a cargo ship, the Andromeda, scheduled to depart for an unregistered port in South America at dawn. Dr. Reed was listed as specialized cargo. As Anya photographed the documents with her phone, the floorboards behind her creaked. She spun around. Silas stood in the doorway, a triumphant, ugly sneer on his face. He wasn't alone. Flanking him were two more of his thugs. One was a mountain of a man with a shaved head and the dead eyes of a shark. The other was wiry and twitchy, his hands clenching and unclenching. "I knew you'd come sniffing around," Silas spat, hefting a heavy iron pipe. "The boss wants you, soldier girl. He wasn't picky about whether you were breathing or not." The office became a cage. The mountain charged first, a clumsy but powerful rush. Anya kicked a steel chair into his path, sending him stumbling. The wiry man lunged with a knife, but Anya was already moving, rolling under the desk and coming up on his other side, kicking the back of his knee and sending him crashing face first into the filing cabinet. Silas swung the pipe, a whistling arc of death that shattered the desk where she had been moments before. She grabbed a heavy desk lamp and threw it, momentarily blinding him as sparks flew. It was the opening she needed. She closed the distance, deflecting his next swing and driving her knuckles into his solar plexus. Air exploded from his lungs. As he gasped, she executed a swift, brutal series of strikes, disarming him and locking his arm behind his back. With a final, wrenching twist, she slammed him onto the splintered remains of the desk. "Where is Croft holding Dr. Reed?" she demanded, applying pressure to his dislocated shoulder. He screamed, a mix of pain and fury. "He's not going to talk." The mountain groaned from the floor. Anya ignored him, increasing the pressure. Silas's bravado shattered. "Tybee Island," he choked out, his face pale with agony. "His private estate. He's got a lab there. The boat leaves from his dock." Having what she needed, she delivered a sharp, precise blow to the side of his neck. He slumped, unconscious. The sounds of approaching vehicles echoed from outside. The Viper's reinforcements were arriving. Without a backward glance, Anya slipped out the office window and melted back into the night. The phone already in her hand, dialing the one man she hoped she could trust. Detective Thorne proved to be a man of decisive action when the stakes were high. After Anya's call, he didn't hesitate. He bypassed official channels he suspected Croft might have compromised and assembled a small, hand-picked SWAT team, men whose integrity he'd vouch for with his own life. Their leader was Sergeant Miller, a calm, towering African-American man with a reassuring presence that belied the lethal efficiency he was known for. They met in the pre-dawn gloom of a deserted parking lot, the air thick with the salty tang of the nearby marsh. Spreading a satellite map of Tybee Island across the hood of his car, Thorne listened intently as Anya outlined a two-pronged assault, her voice calm and authoritative, speaking the language of tactical planning with a fluency that earned the immediate respect of the seasoned officers. It was a fusion of military precision and law enforcement protocol, a plan designed for speed, surprise, and minimal casualties. The raid began at 0400 hours, under the cloak of the last vestiges of night. The main SWAT element created a loud, convincing diversion at the front gate, a cacophony of sirens and shouted commands that drew the attention of Croft's security. Simultaneously, Anya, clad in black tactical gear, slipped into the dark Atlantic waters from a small, inflatable boat 100 yards down the coast. The water was cool against her skin as she swam, a silent predator approaching from the estate's most vulnerable point, the sea. She scaled the seawall, bypassed the electrified fence with practiced ease, and entered the sprawling compound like a phantom. Inside, she encountered Croft's private security. Not street thugs, but highly paid mercenaries. They were good, but Anya was better. She moved from shadow to shadow, neutralizing 3 guards with non-lethal efficiency using a combination of chokeholds and pressure point strikes, clearing a path for Thorne's team to breach the perimeter. The final confrontation took place in a sterile, white laboratory hidden beneath the main house. The air hummed with the sound of advanced equipment, a stark contrast to the opulence above. Julian Croft, a man in his late 60s, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, stood beside a terrified but defiant Dr. Isabel Reed. He held a sleek silver pistol to her head, his composure unnervingly calm. "Master Sergeant Volkov," Croft said, a thin, cruel smile playing on his lips as Anya emerged from the stairwell. "You've proven to be a considerable nuisance, just like my son." The mention of his son was deliberate, a calculated taunt. "You killed him, didn't you?" Anya asked, her own weapon held low but ready, her stance perfectly balanced. "Keon was a sentimental fool," Croft sneered. "He discovered the true scope of my enterprise and threatened to expose it. I gave him a choice, loyalty or oblivion. He made a poor decision. It was a battle of wills, a tense standoff where the first to flinch would lose. Anya kept him, talking, probing the cracks in his psychopathic armor. "His notes in your father's file. He was horrified by what you were doing," Anya pressed, her eyes locked on his. "He wrote about your legacy of death. That's not sentiment, Croft. That's a conscience." For a single fleeting moment, a flicker of something, pain, regret, a ghost of a memory, crossed Croft's cold eyes. It was the opening Anya had been waiting for. Her pistol fired once, the shot echoing in the confined space. The bullet wasn't aimed at his heart, but at his hand. The gun clattered to the floor as Croft roared in pain. In the same fluid motion, Anya lunged forward, shoving Dr. Reed behind her as the SWAT team stormed the room. A sea of red laser dots converging on Julian Croft's chest. The empire built on shadows had finally been dragged into the light. 1 year later, the Georgia sun warmed the wooden planks of the porch. Anya sat beside her father, watching the light fade over the marsh. The legal process had been swift and decisive. Julian Croft, convicted on a mountain of evidence for kidnapping, racketeering, illegal arms manufacturing, and the first-degree murder of his son, was serving 3 consecutive life sentences in a federal supermax prison. Silas received a 25-year sentence after testifying against his former boss, and the rest of the Vipers were serving lengthy prison terms. Liam Volkov's disease hadn't been cured, but a great weight had been lifted from his soul. The fogs of confusion parted more often now, and his smile, when it came, was genuine. He looked at his daughter, his eyes clear and full of a quiet, profound pride. "You brought the ghost home, Anya," he whispered. "You gave him peace." And in doing so, she had found her own. She had accepted Detective Thorne's offer to become a special consultant for the Savannah PD. She was still a warrior, still Nyx, but her battlefield had changed. It was here, under the sheltering arms of the ancient oaks, protecting the city that held her past, and now her future. She was finally home. The story of Anya Volkov reminds us that even in the deepest, most suffocating darkness, the courage of a single person can be a beacon of light. Perhaps the greatest miracles are not always loud signs from heaven, but the quiet strength God plants in the human heart, placing ordinary people in the right place at the right time to become guardians for the vulnerable. In our own daily lives, we all face our own battles, our own shadows. You may not be fighting a criminal empire, but you may be fighting an illness, an injustice, or a private fear. This story is a testament to the fact that the same fierce protective spirit is within you, waiting for a chance to defend what is right and protect those you love. If this story of faith, family, and the fight for justice touched your spirit, please share it with others who may need a reminder of their own inner strength. Let us know in the comments what courage means to you, or a time you witnessed an everyday miracle. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more stories that uplift and inspire. Thank you for being a part of our community. May God bless you and your family, keeping you safe and filling your days with hope.